Welcome once again. This is the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Every single week, Tim tries to help us all with retirement planning solutions right here in Ohio. Mr. Tim Lofton, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Spike. How about you?
Doing well, and we're going to do a great program, as we call it, as seen on TV, retirement. Should we trust all of that stuff, all those late night commercials, all those celebrity endorsements? Now, before though I start ripping on anything that we see on retirement on TV, I realize we're on TV. So
we are on TV, Spike.
But there's some things that you want to be cautionary about, especially about some of the commercials during certain seasons and so forth. And that's why you wanted to talk about that today, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been so much with, you know, these late night commercials that are telling you that now is the best time to do something. And what's really interesting is, you know, you watch like the gold commercial and they're like, gold's at an all-time high. Now's your time to buy. It's like, wait a minute, if it's at its all-time high, why would I buy now?
Yeah.
But there's so much
This
out
is the
there.
perfect solution.
Yeah, it's
for
the
you. This
perfect
is the
solution.
perfect product. And I've known this, Tim. I've known this my entire life. Nothing is the perfect thing to do at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Nothing is, and that's way past my bedtime.
Yeah, there's no good decision made
Right.
at 2 o'clock in the morning, but even in the early mornings and on the Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons. In fact, when your television program is on and your radio program is on, there is all kinds of advertising. And what we just want to do today is make sure that you're looking at your retirement planning and where you're getting your information through an informational lens and not an emotional lens.
Sure.
Because there is no perfect solution
Right.
for everybody's
And
retirement.
there's a lot of famous people out there, some in the industry. I mean, you have, you know, your Susie Ormans and your Dave Ramseys out there that are, you know, but
They've got their following.
They've got their following,
yeah.
right? And
Ramsey's got firm and product and solutions behind him. Susie has her cult, just saying.
right.
But what kind of advice are these people giving in these different programs?
Well, and that's the problem. Is the danger is when we start to see, and we see this a lot of times, where they'll say, you know, this is always a good idea. You should never do that, and that's where we get ourselves into trouble.
So you're saying you should never follow always advice.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
You know, and the idea here is that, you know, I mean, Susie's been very outspoken on annuities, for example. You know, you should never buy an annuity. And she says that right after she's written a book on annuities, right? So understand that there's a lot of times messaging there that does have an agenda.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you for saying that. That's the big thing, is that the way that your firm, as Axum Planning and Wealth, is registered, you have to expose to people if there is what could be a conflict of interest, or if there is monetary compensation for using this tool or that tool. You have to let people know that.
we can't have an agenda. We just can't. And I wouldn't imagine that anyone would want us to have a preconceived idea of advice that we're going to give as they come into our office.
Right, right. What about when people are having those financial seminars at places like your church, your place of faith? I mean, I think a lot of times there's an underlying understanding or thought or belief that the church or a place has approved of the messaging that's going on there, and therefore I should trust it a little bit more.
Right, and I think when you talk about, you know, Dave Ramsey, for example, because that's the reference, is that, you know, he has a lot of great ideas, and there's definitely some things that work for a lot of people. But I mean, you can also look at the idea that we should never have debt, we should always pay off our debt, and is that always the best advice? And the answer is maybe not. If I'm borrowing money at 2.9% on a mortgage, and I could invest that money and even at a guaranteed rate and get a 5 or 6% rate, why would I pay off that 2.9 that I'm also getting to deduct potentially on my taxes?
Right, right. The phrase "never have debt." Well, wait a second. There's two kinds of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. 2.9% debt on a mortgage, if it's a payment that you're comfortable with and you can do something else with the remainder, well, now you've got a strategy. You always talk about this as having a purpose with your money, and I don't think always or nevers work in creating a purpose. You need to define what that money is supposed to do for you.
I mean, it's better to say sometimes. You know,
Sometimes.
this might be a good idea for you, but when you start putting those ultimates on there, it can lead people down the wrong path.
Right, right. And it's just so many commercials, so many things we see out there. There's one with a mustache. My mom will watch this one all of the time. And they talk a lot about reverse mortgages. We're hearing a lot about, you get to stay in your property, you get some income. Tim, have you found reverse mortgages to be a worthwhile tool?
I was just now getting the mustache reference.
Okay, all right, you got it. All right, he used to drive a Ferrari.
He used to
wear
drive a
Hawaiian
Ferrari,
shirt,
live in Hawaii. Yeah, okay, I
right.
got it now. Yes, he is a big spokesperson, and that's the thing. And I think for the most part, you know, the viewers are smart enough to know that if somebody's got a message out there that's a famous person, they're being paid, they're being compensated for that message, and so you
Because I just don't think that celebrity needs a reverse mortgage. So
No.
why is it that person talking about it?
exactly. It's not like they're giving their personal experience of I've got one of these and you should have one too.
Right. On the other hand, like during our radio show, during our television, I have no problem with the concept of marketing. Putting an idea out there that somebody might not know is a solution that they could use, putting it in their hands to decide, do you want to call our phone number? Do you want to go to the website and learn more? Make sure you sit down with a professional and find out if this works for you.
Sure.
That to me is putting an idea out there. But buying something or wanting to, just because there's a celebrity on it or saying this is the time to get this right now because this is your solution, that stuff makes me nervous.
Exactly. And you know, when it comes to reverse mortgages, you know, really they at least got some degree of legislation behind them around 2014, where you know they have put rules in place. There's about 24 states that have come up with additional rules behind these, but the idea of it is pretty simple.
I would love to hear the idea of it. Let's do the entire idea behind reverse mortgages because I know our people want to hear it right after the break. If you
All
don't
right,
mind.
that'll work for me.
The retirement blueprint, though. Look, this is what we talk about. Let's talk about it in our way to our television viewers. What is the retirement blueprint to you?
The retirement blueprint is a written financial plan that it creates a income plan, an estate plan, a tax plan, a wealth management strategy plan, as well as looking at things like long-term care and health care in retirement. And that is a complimentary review that people can receive by simply calling the number 855-684-3485 for your complimentary review.
When it comes to retirement planning, careful what you see on TV and advertisements, although you're right, we are here on TV, and we put the review in your hands. There is no cost to it. We want to see what your investments look like, the costs, the risks, the fees inside there. Take a look at your taxes, estate planning, help you figure out how and when to take your Social Security, all that and more, and then we send you home. Say, does this make sense to you? And give us a call if you would like to work with someone to build your own no-cost retirement blueprint. Call the phone number you see down here. More with Tim Lofton. Do reverse mortgages work in retirement? Right after this.
It goes back actually when I was 11 years old. That was the first time I discovered what not having money felt like. I remember being in Sunday school class and one of the parents came in to let us know that the ski trip, which was kind of a rite of passage at 12, was coming up. And so I got my permission slip and class got out and I was that kid. I was like running through the church and up the stairs and weaving in and out of people and got into the sanctuary and I looked at the very back of the sanctuary and I saw my mom and she was there with 2 or 3 other ladies and they were talking. And I took off at a dead sprint and I'm waving this piece of paper and talking a mile a minute and I get to her and she's like, wait honey, what is it that you're saying? And I said, Mom, I said I can go. Like, I'm gonna be 12, I can go. And she's like, go to what? I'm like, the ski trip, the youth group ski trip. And I'll never forget, she got down on one knee and she wrapped her arms around me and she said, baby, she said, we can't afford that this year. And it wasn't the disappointment of not being able to go on the trip. It was the look in her eyes that she couldn't afford it and that she couldn't do that for me. And I really think that that put me on the path of having a heart for helping people get to retirement, to be able to stay retired and to live their best life. And that all starts with advice. And that's what I chose to do for a living.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. We're talking about some of the advertisements you might see on TV on how they can help you with your retirement. Be careful with phrases like always and never, or this is the solution for you, because for people like Tim Lofton and what you do at Axum, it's a process. There is no magic product, unfortunately. And I know we are in a fast world. Everybody wants fast answers. We want
Magic
something.
pixie dust.
Want the magic that we want, and we want it right now. But unfortunately, to do it well, it really is a process. So, right before the break, we were talking about reverse mortgages. This gets advertised a lot. I know how I feel about it, but give me some of the facts first. Maybe you can help me out with it.
Sure. So, this is a strategy where people typically, you're talking about someone at 62 or older, they've typically paid off their house, so they're going to now use the value of their house to give them income, lifetime income. And so it's not that it doesn't work, okay? It does work. The question is it the best way to go about this? Because unfortunately, even with all the legislation that exists, it's still one of those things that people are kind of on the fence on whether or not it's a good deal. Even with the best of these products, the fees are typically pretty high, and there is still some things that you expose yourself to unnecessarily. Things like that income can go against you for Medicaid, for qualifying for Medicaid.
Okay.
It can create an issue with a loss of spouse. While the spouse can still live there, I mean, essentially after both are gone, the house is gone. And that is not always the best way of going about it.
Yeah.
It's an arrow in the quiver, but it's not the first thing that we would typically go to in really addressing what's typically a larger problem.
And what's typically the need there is the income, is a need for income. And
Or it's that the spending is too high really for the income that they have.
True.
That is a lot of times, we're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a larger problem that we're not really addressing.
Right. And I know that the home is a very personal asset. Sometimes, though, selling that asset that you were able to accumulate in, maybe downsizing there, could be an option as well. Please get a second opinion before you sign a dotted line. Some of these decisions for you that are irreversible, such as when you turn on your Social Security, signing into a contract like that, even an annuity contract, whatever it might be, please make sure you get a second opinion. You understand how it works before you sign anything on the dotted line. To move on from there, there's so many things in the news and so many things we're talking about. You saw an article recently, and it was a great professor who had written this on how maybe there are different ways that the rich get richer, but can you give us some insight into that?
Sure. And so the strategy that this professor came up with is called buy, borrow, and die.
That's uplifting.
That is very uplifting, right? It sounds like exactly the path we want to walk down. I want to buy, I want to borrow, I want to die.
Well, like you said, though, none of us are getting out of here alive. There's a 100% chance.
100% chance.
That's the only thing in finance we get. There's a 100% chance none of us are getting out of this alive.
The attorneys actually will allow us to say that. It's the only thing we can put 100% on. But it's an interesting strategy because this was a study that he did to essentially explain how the wealthy get wealthy and how they stay wealthy over time.
Okay, and who was this again?
So this is Professor Ed McCaffrey. He was at USC.
So he wrote this, and then he was a great small receiver for the Patriots as well.
It might be a different guy, I think. Just potentially.
Am I crossing my reps? Okay, all right.
So he did finance on the side while he was playing football.
All right, whichever McCaffrey
it was.
We're talking about how we leverage our own assets to create more.
It's creating leverage, and the idea here is that the buy part is where we are investing in things like maybe stocks and bonds or collectibles or real estate, where we are purchasing those assets for growth over time, but we're leveraging those assets. And I'll give you an example of a client we had. They had saved enough money. They wanted to get into real estate. They had enough money to pay cash for the actual properties that they were looking to purchase. And instead of doing that, instead of buying 2 rental units and paying cash for them, they bought 6 rental units and used that money as the down payment for each of them. And if you think about that strategy, and we go back to the never have debt and kind of that thought process, they're purposely taking on debt, but that debt is going to be paid off by the people that are renting the properties. And they had a 9-year window where essentially they were going to be able to pay off those properties. Now they're going to own 6 properties to produce income versus just having the 2.
Right, and so in a way, even though they went more all in with it, it was really kind of diversifying their portfolio because they're going to have that many more tenants, they're going to have that much more cash flow. But it really was looking at a bigger picture. And was there any pushback? Did they say, I don't know, 6 properties? I think we can take care of 2, but that sounds like a lot more. But it was a way to grow it. Are you going to have to help them out with this?
Interestingly enough, they actually said, Dave Ramsey said we shouldn't have any debt. So,
all right.
So
if you want the anti-advice, call Tim Lofton.
And again, I get it. I've never had a client that has their house paid off that isn't happy that their house is paid off.
Of course,
and so I understand that. But when you're looking at the bigger picture, when you look at every large company in America that has done what they've done it through leverage. That's the only way that they can grow, and the only way that they can expand, the only way that they can buy new buildings and to hire more employees is to leverage those assets. And so, again, this isn't my study. This is a study that a very smart guy from USC came up with, but it is absolutely true that, in some cases, this can be a game changer for people when they're thinking about retirement, maybe in a different way that they normally would.
And the idea of how the rich might have different strategies than the rest of us. Look, we work hard, we save, we're trying to help the kids get through college, maybe even a little bit in the first home loan or their wedding and so forth. And we're like, okay, and we're just trying to get to the end of the week and the end of our day. But it's like, look, that phrase, if we got to make our money work harder, work for us, it's that there are strategies, and you might be able to sit down with someone who can expand your idea process of working with what you already have. Now, there was a third part to it. That was the part that I don't like talking about. It was the buy, borrow, and die.
Die. Yes, the die portion.
That was one heck of a, but he didn't leave himself any room for a continuing. He could have at least been buy, borrow, and live, and then the next one.
Then he could have had a sequel.
Yeah,
right.
There's no sequel
to this one because.
But this is the building of generational wealth. I think
it is the building of generational wealth, and the idea behind it was that with the debt, even if you do pass away, the debt is going to be paid off by the assets that you've accumulated, and those assets are at a much higher level than they would have been had you just paid cash for everything and let the asset just grow by itself. This is allowed leverage, it allowed growth, it expanded what you could have possibly done with investing, and it created a higher degree of wealth, which can help with tax planning, with estate planning, and more importantly, like you said, creating generational wealth.
And I'm not sure, I think our relative audience here might be thinking, well, then how do I sit down with somebody like that? This is probably cost prohibitive. Yes, I'd like to see what I can do with my assets, but is there a cost to come in before even having any sort of plan and talking about these ideas?
No, of course not. Our reviews are complimentary, and we do that for a reason of making sure that what we have to offer is a fit for you, and that what your needs are could be met by us. And so it's really the process of sitting down, letting us listen to your story, get to know you, to really learn what it is that you want to accomplish out of retirement, and then we can take a look at it and take a different look than what maybe you have been taught or read or learned growing up. And just like the leverage piece, we've grown up with no debt, but if debt will work for you in the right way and you can understand it, it can make a huge difference in the long run.
All right. Folks, call the phone number you see down on the bottom of the screen so we can get you started on your own retirement blueprint. There's no cost to it. We want to sit down with you, maybe even have you go back home for a week or two. Come on back. We'll put together some ideas and strategies and see if they make sense to you. The decision is in your hands. It doesn't cost you anything to call the phone number, but it could cost you a lot by not reaching out and finding out what your retirement could look like. Call the phone number you see right here. Would you turn down $100 million to work one more year? We're going to talk about that when we get back right after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back. We're talking about your retirement planning strategies, and I did just lead you on with an egg there. Would you work one more year for $100 million? Like the reason I asked this, I sent you a text. I saw this story on Saturday night, right? I think I sent it to you.
You did, because I was like, why are you texting me on Saturday night?
Yeah, it shows you how much of a life I have when I'm looking at news stories at 8 p.m. on a Saturday and sending them over to Tim. That's my social life. But it was a story. I had never known this. So Jerry Seinfeld turned down one more season of doing Seinfeld for $100 million.
$100 million.
Because he knew, he's like, I did what I wanted to with this. There's nothing more I can accomplish. My lifestyle is not going to change. There's no amount of money that you could throw me to work a little bit more. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, what a wonderful, of course I'd work more. I'd take as much as I can. But let's bring it down to the real world, people like me who are going to work for a living. You know, there are some folks who just think, I got to keep working. I don't know when I've saved enough. Maybe if I've got it, I'll do 6 more months, 12 more months, 24 months. But when it won't make a difference, is it worth still working?
Well, and that's the question is, you know, everyone that comes into the office has the same concerns. Am I going to have enough income to retire? Am I going to run out? I mean, they've been doing studies since the beginning of time, and running out of money is the #1 concern of every retiree. But you don't know what you don't know. And worse is sometimes we're looking at the income piece and saying, okay, I think it's going to be enough, only to find out later that after taxes and inflation, it's not. So the whole starting point is really in creating a plan that will define how much income you need, where it's going to come from, how we're going to get to it. But, you know, it can also lead to exciting things as well. We had a client come in last week, and you know, we're going over their plan, and we're looking at their income need, and they were already there. In fact, they still wanted to work another 9 years, not because they had to, they just liked what they did. They enjoyed going to work, they didn't want to retire early. You know, there was a component there of Social Security, and there was a component there of Medicare, but at the end of the day, they just really liked going to work. But here's what happened for them. They don't have to save anymore. They've already saved enough for retirement.
Oh, wow.
So that means that the money that they were putting, which was fairly significant, into the retirement plans each year, they no longer have to put in. They can spend it.
Oh my gosh.
So
if they were maxing those accounts, I mean, we could be at 80, 20, 25, 30,000
about
a year.
$30,000 a year.
Wow. And so
Found
they're going
money.
out. They're going out on the party boat, and but they're living the lifestyle they want to, or getting to enjoy things right now because they found out. Again, this is fortunate, great, wonderful situation.
Because sometimes it goes the other way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes the other way.
But you might find out and say, hey, we are a little short, but if we do this for the next 6 months, 12 months, if we do this for a couple of years, if we start maxing out, we can start chipping away at what you want for that income lifestyle. Right. But wouldn't you rather know than not know?
Well, and I would think that everyone would want to know, because you can't just show up at our office on the day you're ready to retire and cross your fingers. And as we look at America today, that's happening more and more. There's these mistakes that people are making along the way that they could have avoided, that they could have made those little changes. I mean, little changes, but over a 5, 10, 15 years can have an enormous impact on the outcome.
I just wonder the lightness in his feet going back into the office the next Monday after meeting with you. Just say, hey, could you work late? He said, nah, I'm not really feeling it. Well, you said they enjoyed what they do, but the difference of going to work because you want to and going to work because you have to.
That's my definition of retirement, is when you go to work because you choose to, not because you have to, you are indeed retired. It has nothing to do with rocking chairs and front porches.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because we say that, we often identify within ourselves of what we do or the family that we bring up, and when we lose some sense of that purpose, retirement itself becomes harder. It's not just about crunching the numbers.
But they were just as concerned that they were not where they needed to be and that they weren't going to get there in the next 9 years, only to find out that they were past where they needed to be. I mean, they weren't even close to not making it.
Okay, can I ask you, relative ages around where they were at? We don't want to say their names. But.
Yeah, they were both in their mid-50s. And again, they were looking at, kind of...
Were they really aggressive savers early in life?
Yeah, I mean, they were great savers. They did everything right. They didn't have any debt. They really...
So they listened to that other guy, right?
They listened to the other guy. And again, it worked for them. They ended up in a place almost out of fear, that they were so afraid that they weren't going to make it, that they made it. And it took them a week to digest that information, to really understand the gravity of the plan and what we had in place. And once it sunk in, the feeling that you could see that they internalized from that was amazing.
Right.
It was great to be.
And from what I know of you, that's why you wake up every day.
That
and
is
go
exactly
to the office,
why I
is
wake
being
up
able to
every
help
day.
people. And then in the reverse, if you can find ways to help people and say, let's do a little bit of this, let's do a little bit
And
of this
save
hard
them.
work, and save them,
Yeah.
help them get there. That's what the Retirement Blueprint is all about. Tim Lofton, thank you so much. We joked about it at the beginning, as seen on TV, retirement. We know that we're on television here, but just make sure that you look at the information with a lens of education. Make sure you're getting the complete information. We're not making emotional decisions. This, for us and for Tim Lofton, is about a process. It's not one specific product. There is no simple solution out there. But we do have one simple solution for you right now. Call the phone number you see right here. We'll have you come in for an appointment, and you'll get started on your own, no cost, Retirement Blueprint. For Tim Lofton, I'm Spike Spangle. We'll be back next week.